My name is Leora Marielle Ventra. I grew up in a small, picturesque town with my foster parents, Adrian and Celeste Ventra. They are the kindest people I know, gentle, understanding, and supportive of my dreams and quirks. But even in the warmth of their love, a part of me has always felt incomplete, like a melody missing its harmony. It all began when I turned 12. That was when I first learned about my past, the tragedy that separated me from my twin brother. 18 years ago, my twin brother, Kale, and I were born in a coastal hospital in Lucasia, a bustling port city. We were named Leora, meaning light, and Kale, meaning mighty warrior. Our parents, Leona and Elias, held us with such joy and hope for the future. But just 3 days later, disaster struck. A massive tsunami, triggered by an underwater earthquake, devastated Lucasia. The hospital was caught in the chaos. My mother later told me how she fought to hold on to us as the waves tore through the building. Kale and I were swept from her arms, and in the chaos, we were separated. My parents clung to hope that their children had survived, but in the aftermath, they were told I was rescued and Kale was presumed lost. What they didn't know was that Kale had survived too. He was taken in by another family far from Lucasia, while I was placed with Adrian and Celeste. Growing up, I always had the strangest feeling that someone was missing from my life. My foster parents told me the truth when I was old enough to understand, and from then on, the idea of my twin brother became an obsession. I imagined him as someone brave and kind, someone who shared the same features as me, maybe the same smile or the same eyes. Every birthday I whispered a silent wish into the candles. Let me find him. Growing up, I always had the strangest feeling that someone was missing from my life. My foster parents told me the truth when I was old enough to understand, and from then on, the idea of my twin brother became an obsession. I imagined him as someone brave and kind, someone who shared the same features as me, maybe the same smile or the same eyes. Every birthday I whispered a silent wish into the candles. Let me find him. When I turned 18, I gathered my courage and asked my foster parents for their blessing to search for Kale. Adrian put his hand on my shoulder and said, "Leora, you've always been curious about your past, and we've always wanted you to follow your heart. If finding your brother brings you peace, we'll support you every step of the way." Celeste, with her gentle smile, added, "We're your family, no matter what, but we know how much this means to you. Go find him, sweetheart." Their unwavering support gave me the strength I needed. I spent months searching, combing through old records, scouring online databases, and even hiring a private investigator. I faced countless dead ends, but I refused to give up. Finally, a breakthrough came. The investigator found a man named Kale Arden Solis, who matched the details of my missing brother. He was living in a bustling city a few hours away. My heart raced as I dialed his number for the first time. When he answered, his voice was deep and confident. I could barely form the words. Meeting Kale was surreal. When I first saw him, it was like looking into a mirror from another dimension. He was tall, with strikingly handsome features, sharp jawline, piercing green eyes, and wavy dark hair. He looked every bit the mighty warrior his name implied. Kale was skeptical at first, but the DNA test confirmed we were twins. I learned about his life, how he grew up with the Solis family, who loved him as their own. He was kind and thoughtful, though a little guarded. We spent hours talking, piecing together the fragments of our shared past. He showed me old photos of his childhood, and I shared my dreams and the longing I'd always felt to find him. For the first time in my life, I felt whole. Kale and I decided to find our birth parents together. When we showed up at their doorstep, the look on Leona and Elias's faces was indescribable. Tears streamed down their cheeks as they hugged us tightly. "I never stopped praying for this day," Leona whispered, her voice trembling. Elias added, "You've both grown into such incredible people. We're so proud of you." For weeks we immersed ourselves in their stories, but amidst the joy, I began to notice something unsettling within myself, feeling I didn't understand and didn't want to acknowledge. Cale was everything I'd imagined and more. He was smart, charismatic, and compassionate. He had a way of making people feel at ease, and his confidence was magnetic. I found myself wanting to be near him, to impress him, to make him notice me not as his sister, but as a woman. I started doing little things to catch his attention, dressing up more than usual, laughing a bit too hard at his jokes, finding excuses to spend time with him. But Cale was always kind, always polite. And yet, he never seemed to notice me the way I secretly wished he would. I hated myself for feeling this way. I tried to push the thoughts aside, to remind myself that we were siblings, but the more time I spent with him, the harder it became to ignore. One evening, I couldn't hold it in any longer. We were sitting on a quiet hill overlooking the city lights, a place Cale had taken me to share stories and unwind. "Cale," I began, my voice trembling. He turned to me, his expression gentle but curious. "What is it?" I hesitated, my heart pounding. "I need to tell you something, and I know it's wrong, but I can't keep it bottled up anymore." He frowned slightly, concern flickering in his eyes. "Leora, you can tell me anything." I took a deep breath. "I think I'm starting to have feelings for you. Not as your sister, but as something more." For a moment, there was only silence. Cale's expression softened, but his voice was firm. "Leora, I care about you deeply, but are you sure this is what you want? I like you too, but I didn't want to make any more thinking I may misjudge your kindness." I nodded, leaning in for a kiss. The next few minutes were the hottest minutes of my life. If I had known my twin brother was a pro in bed, I would have come prepared. He gently caressed my behind, while his soft lips sent shivers down my spine with each kiss. I could feel my cookie getting wetter and wetter by the second, and was afraid he was going to notice it too. He then gave me a gentle push to the bed, and we both at first hesitated, 'cause damn, we are twins, but we didn't feel like it at that time. He slid off my top and sacked my oranges so hard I could feel them tear off, each suck transcending me into another dimension. He then asked if I was ready for his big banana, and my oh my, I was not ready when I looked at it. It was somewhat 10 inches, and all this was going into me. He saw my frightened face and he whispered, "Relax, I'll only do head." But he lied. The first plunge made me release a big roar. I could feel the banana in my uterus. But this time, the slow and gentle motions compensated for the huge size. He did it so gently that I could feel myself closer to climax with each thrust. And when the time reached, we came together. I lay in bed with him, not worried about any consequences, but I knew I would feel guilty later on. The days that followed were unbearable. Cale started avoiding me, retreating behind walls I couldn't breach. Whenever I tried to talk to him, he made excuses to leave. I felt the weight of what we'd done pressing down on me. Guilt clawed at my heart, and every time I saw Cale, the shame only grew. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. I replayed that moment over and over in my mind, wondering how I could have let it happen. One night, as I sat alone in my room, staring at the moonlit sky, I made a decision. I couldn't stay, not like this. The bond we had worked so hard to rebuild was now tarnished, and I couldn't bear to look at him without feeling the sting of what we'd done. I packed my bags silently, my heart heavy. Before leaving, I wrote Cale a letter. "Cale, I'm sorry for everything. I never wanted to hurt you, and I hate myself for crossing that line. I think it's best if I go back to my foster parents. They've always been my home, and maybe some distance will help us both heal. I love you as my brother, and I always will. Please take care of yourself, Leora." The next morning, I left quietly, not wanting to face him or our birth parents. As the train carried me away, I felt both relief and sorrow. I knew I had made the right choice, but it didn't make the pain any easier to bear. For now, distance was the only way to move forward.